there's always a bit of that delay. Just mute it. Okay. All right. And we're live. Okay. Hello. Yay! So we're talking about I almost called it vermicomposting. Whatever, same thing. And we're kind of we've gone from a weekly, well, we were doing 3 times a week of WE-SOLATION. Once, oh, is that me?
It was you, sorry.
Oh no, I thought I still had something on. Anyway, sorry, this is Shannon, Mama Eco, and Adriana from Collective Impact Journey. So she's one of the team members of WE-SOLATION. And WE-SOLATION is basically a project of skill sharing to kind of bring us out of this feeling of being isolated right now, because we are. So it's been really fun. I've learned so much. And yeah, it's just about bringing the community together when we can't physically be together. So I'm Sophie, your eco friend. So I do zero waste speaking engagements and consultation work. And as I mentioned, this is Shannon, Mama Eco, and maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what you do. Oh.
Sorry, I had myself muted, so I didn't want to have background noise. I'm Shannon. I have a business called Mama Eco, and I help people make better decisions when it comes to the environment. So I work with businesses doing sustainability consulting to help them work on their own footprint and also support their customers in doing the same. And then I also work with individuals one-on-one with sustainability coaching, again, to help them sort of do their part. So I kind of tackle, you know, these bigger issues from the business side and also the individual side. So that's me.
Yeah, and lots of really great information on your blog and your account. So definitely check that out. So before we get started, we always like to start with a land acknowledgement. So I'm going to do a kind of a general Toronto land acknowledgement because that's where I am. So this land has supported human beings for thousands of years. This land is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Bethune First Nations, the Seneca, the Métis, and most recently the territories of Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations. So I am still learning and will continue to forever. But land acknowledgement, when I first started hearing this at different events that I would go to, I thought, wow, that's really great. Like I didn't know. I only really started learning about Indigenous issues really in the last handful of years. And I've just been kind of blown away about the injustices, but also the perspectives. And I wanted to share a great website that I found, which I would encourage people to check out. It's called the landneedsguardians.ca. So we'll put that in the descriptions in the YouTube video, but just a little excerpt from this. So basically what they do is they provide programming for guardians of the land, which is pretty amazing when I went through everything. But a University of BC study showed that Researchers, when they looked at land and species data from Canada, Australia, and Brazil, found that a number of birds, mammals, and amphibians and reptiles were highest on lands managed by Indigenous communities. Indigenous stewardship works because it honors the relationship between people and the land. It recognized that caribou herds, salmon runs, and songbird nesting grounds benefit from respectful management. In our communities, that management is guided by Indigenous law, generations of traditional knowledge, and cultural responsibility. I just thought that was really beautiful, and it kind of ties into what we're doing today in being able to kind of take on some teachings and some accountability to understand what it takes to grow and respect and all of this. I'm just learning. I've only been doing vermicomposting for a year now, and I was like, if you had told me this like a few years ago, I'd be like, there's no way I'm gonna have worms in my house. Not a friggin' chance that I would like volunteer to have that. But here we are. So it's just about respecting the land and to see like your food get transformed into something that's going to grow more plants, more food. It's just kind of beautiful. So let's get started. And if anyone today has any questions, like feel free to send them out. Adriana has been lovely and volunteering to moderate and make sure that all the questions get answered. And that's why, actually, I didn't mention, that's why we're doing this today, is because Shannon reached out as a friend to learn more about vermicomposting, and so we decided, why not take it online? So here we are. So I have, unfortunately, it's kind of hard to see, but maybe I'll pull back a bit. Ooh. So I have this really cool thing. Ooh, there we go. It's really small. It's actually great for apartment living because that's probably one of the questions I've been asked the most. See, sitting. It's a good party trick too, actually. I give it as a seat sometimes, and then I'll tell people later that there's worms in here. But yeah, this is our composter. I wanted something small for our place. We're in a condo townhouse. And so I think that's one of the most common questions is like, I can't have worms in my house. I don't have a big enough space. But this is all that we have. I don't know how big this is. I'd say it's like maybe 1.5 feet square. Yeah, it's great. And like I said, doubles as a stool. So there is in this, so you can DIY, but I didn't want to take that risk myself. So this is the base. This is where kind of any potential, if it's too wet, that it will drain into here. And there is actually like a, what is it called? A spigot. Is that right? You can collect that water there, which honestly, I think I did that once maybe in a year. So it didn't really get that wet. But that stuff can be great for just watering your plants. So how I started, I'll just briefly go over. So this is the base tray. And what you would do is you'd wet like some newspaper and put it on the base. And that's just to prevent them from going down, prevent the worms from going down. And then you would get if you have distilled water or well water, I believe that that's fine. But if you're using tap water, they recommend letting it stand so that the chlorine gets evaporated over a 24-hour period. It just makes the pH level nicer for the worms. So, so that's what you just have to kind of do it overnight. And then you mix that with the water with, now there's probably other alternatives, but I don't know of them offhand. Maybe the wood chips that you got, Adriana, for your gardening, maybe that would work, like the little for hamsters and stuff.
Yeah, the untreated wood.
Yeah, maybe that would work as well. Because so this is Coir brick, which is, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but it's coconut husk. So you can pick this up at pretty much any garden center, like a Home Depot or something like that. We still have a lot left over. And like I said, we started this a year ago. So it's pretty hard. Oh, I actually was able to break it. Wow, I made myself look real strong there. Normally it's really hard to break. So you might have to.
Somebody's been working out every day during her quarantine.
Really frustrated. So you might just have to wet it a bit. And you can do that with one of the liters of water. You just let it sit and then you can break it up. You mix that. A third of that, hang on, let me see my list here. Anyone who's in this area, in Toronto area, Kathy's Composters is amazing. That's who I got this from, and all this stuff just get started. Okay, right. So half a Coir brick, which is like, I don't know, mine wasn't a brick, it was like slabs. I don't know, I did about half of a slab. And then you mix that with shredded newsprint or like paper. I had a bunch of this stuff from an event that I had, so I just tore this stuff up and that was fine. You can also use egg cartons, just make them, you know, smaller. That's good, or just, you know, regular. This was, I think, a sugar bag, so you can just break it up. Just make sure that there's no toilet paper rolls too. You could do that. Just make sure there's no glue or anything that might be harmful to the worms.
So I have a question. So it's okay that you can have colored paper, but I've read it's either there's a certain type of paper you don't want, like glossy paper or like colored glossy paper.
Yeah, that's probably true. I can't actually say, but it makes sense that it would be, because that would mean there's some kind of plasticized like material on it, I would imagine. Okay. I was concerned about the color myself when I was thinking about, like, I have so many of these still left over. So I contacted Kathy, the woman I got the composter from, and she was like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem. And these are not plasticized either. So, and they seem to be fine. You will get, definitely, like anything, you'll get differences of opinions, you know, maybe that's based on the temperature of your house, or maybe the type of worms you have. Apparently there are 2 types of worms that are great for composting. Red wrigglers are one, which is what I have, and then some other kind of European worms. So I don't know, maybe the European worms are hardier. I don't know.
That's hilarious. I had no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I was doing a little bit more research than I would normally, because I was going to be under fire. But yeah, I think that's probably a safe practice. If you think that there's some kind of, like, you know, as we know, like the BPA and that kind of stuff, I would imagine that some form of that with that glossy texture. So I'm assuming that's where it's coming from, but I can't say for sure. Yeah, so you mix the Coir brick and then like about a liter of potting soil. And I think the potting soil is only when you get started, to kind of get the bedding to really get some microorganisms going and to get a happy soil and happy environment for the worms. And then you put the worms on top once you've done all of that. You want to make sure that you're doing it in a bright setting, so that the worms want to go into the soil. You give them like 10 to 20 minutes because they don't like light. So they want to hide. So if you do it in dark, they might not like necessarily go right in.
So
yeah,
that's before, so because there's a lid on it, right? So you mean you let them have it? Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was cutting you off. I'll let you finish the question.
So you mentioned having light, but normally there's a lid on the compost. So is that before you put the lid back on, or?
Yes. So this is when you're initially setting it up. So you've done all the soil. Oh no, this is a layer. You've done all the soil. You've mixed everything together. Maybe before you put the worms in, actually just check the soil so you can grab a clump of that mixture that you made and check how wet it is. Now in the beginning I was like, how wet is wet? Like, so they say that kind of like a wrung out sponge. So a little bit more of a measurement to that would be to grab that soil and then squeeze it. If a couple drops falls out, that's fine. If there's like a stream of it, then that's too much. So you want to add more paper or the Coir brick, the coconut husk, something that dries it up. And then once it kind of looks like it's, you know, the right moisture, then you can lay the worms on top. And then, like I said, you want to leave them out in direct light. When I say leave them out, I just mean like watch them. Sit there and just like see. It's only going to take them 10, 20 minutes maybe. And they'll want to go into the compost. And once you see that they've, the soil, the bedding, then you can put the lid on. Is there any questions with that part? Like that's basically the getting started part.
So that's like the first time around, and then you put food scraps in at that point, or you have to give them some time?
So I'm trying to remember when I put the food. I think you can put the food in pretty close. I think I might have let them like sit for, you know, a day or so before, just to let them get used to the space. And then you, it's like a whole new, oh my God, it's snowing. That is not right. Yeah, just to get them used to this space before throwing in some more food. I'm just trying to see if it's specific. I don't think it's a big deal. It's within, yeah, it doesn't really say in here, and I don't remember it being, I was really excited to feed them like pretty much right away. But I think I waited a day or so just to kind of get them acclimatized, I guess, to this space. I can talk about the feeding part okay, so the feeding part, the best thing to do is to keep the things small, because then you can spread it out and they kind of go all throughout the soil, and they get through it faster when it's kind of cut up, and they like food that's kind of decomposing. I'll show you actually the worms of the hour. I wish I could show you better because I had my phone set up, but because it's on the way we're doing it, it's a little bit tricky. I guess I'll just do this. So you won't be able to see them, but if I move stuff, actually, if I do that, is that okay? Can you see there?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. So, oh my God, I hope I don't make a horrible mistake. Off the wall. So I just fed them quite a bit yesterday. So I was warning Shannon before we went live that like when I've just done a big feed and go back in, it's kind of the grossest period, just because that's where they kind of conglomerate. They just like, they're all in a pile and they kind of look like brains. But anyway, you get over it. You don't have to touch them. But I actually like picking them up when I'm about to feed them, when there isn't a new feed in there. But if you want to see, hang on, maybe I'll go from this angle. So I used to do it with like a ladle or a spatula or something, but look at me now.
Good for you. I love it.
Okay, hang on. I can't, it's just hard to hold it up. I'll just pull up.
You're videoing this on your laptop?
Yeah, it's on my laptop right now. Yeah.
Could you just angle the screen down, or is that not a possibility?
I don't know. See, oh yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Cool, thanks.
There we go. Get a nice little close up of those little wigglers.
Yeah, so actually they're not super brain-like today, so that's good. I didn't dig deep either. So can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're sleepy. They don't really like to be disturbed too much. So you shouldn't feed them more than like 2 to 3 times a week. And to be honest, I think I only feed them once a week probably. And for anyone who's concerned about, oh yeah, that is a good view. Anyone who's concerned about like, well, like, is it going to be like a pet that I have to have someone come over? Like, who's going to want to take care of my freaking worms? But you don't have to worry about that because they can go like 2-3 weeks without a feed and it's fine.
Okay, that's good to know. That was one of my questions because like sometimes I go like away to Trinidad for like a month.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are they just gonna, so like if they did go a month without feeding, would they just die and I would have to get more, or?
No, they won't die. What will happen is you'll probably see less of them. They take care of business.
Yeah.
You know, like if it's overpopulated, they handle things. That's what I've noticed. And I did one thing to also note, I don't know if you could tell, but there's like some of the little white spots are eggs, but some of them are these little tiny bugs. And I was like, oh no, do I have some kind of pest or something? And I don't know if you can see, it just looks like little white dots and then all of a sudden they start moving, which kind of freaked me out. But I looked it up and it actually was a good thing. And I can't remember the name of it, but it's a symbiotic relationship. So it actually is a good sign. So I was like, oh, wow, okay, then I'm doing a good job. Yeah, so I think I feel like this is a little bit dry. So I'm gonna just put some, I'm gonna mist it with some water.
Sophie, can you tell us where you got that system? Like, what's the brand and where do I get one? It's very
it's so it's Kathy's Composters. So on Instagram, she's Kathy at Kathy's Composters, and her website I think is the same.ca, I believe. She's kind of like the guru of worms around these here parts. Yeah, she's great and she's so enthusiastic and she's super helpful. Like I emailed her a few times the first few weeks because I was like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? And she's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. She's pretty quick to get back to me. She does a lot of educational workshops and stuff for kids. And yeah, she's awesome.
I have to say that's the most beautiful vermicompost bin I have seen. All the other ones, I was like, man, I don't want that in my house.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I felt. And I'm like, it really has to go in a corner for me. Like it has to fit in a corner. It can't take up a whole like space. I just don't have that space. Yeah, so I was pretty stoked when I'll just show you what I'm doing here. So when you want it to stay moist, you add paper, some kind of bedding on top of it to keep it moist. And you can do the same if it's too moist and just kind of mix it in a little bit, mix the paper in if you want, or just leave it open for an hour or two and it'll dry up a little bit.
I have a question about the mites or the bugs. So in every thing that I've read about the vermicompost, it says, like you said, that like some sort of mites or other pests, if you want to call them, are normal and are good. But have you ever had any issue with them coming outside of the bin? Like, is there a way to avoid that?
Yeah, so I haven't actually, surprisingly, and that was definitely probably my other main concern is pests, and I haven't had any of that. And I think that is due to a few things. The main thing I think that is the most common issue is when the food scraps are not properly covered. So if you just kind of put it on top and don't properly cover it up so that the worms can actually get to it, and that it actually does compost, because obviously, you know, when you throw an apple core onto pavement or just even onto soil, it's going to take a lot longer than if you were to bury it, right? So you won't get the smell. And actually, surprisingly, I don't know what I was thinking, but it was actually, I'm glad I did do it, is I had, you know, when cabbage goes bad, like it smells terrible, like
Really bad.
farted real bad. Anyway, I had some of that happening and I was like, oh shoot. And I just put it in the vermicompost. I was like, oh shoot, I've never actually done something where something was actually smelling. I'm like, did I just make a huge mistake and just ruin my whole pile? But I didn't. I just made sure that it was fully buried and it was stinky. In case I didn't try that home already. And then I actually put some coffee grounds. That's really helpful for the smell as well, but it also helps with the pH level and moisture control. And also ground up eggshells are also very good for balancing out the pH level too. So all these things might seem a little overwhelming at first, but I didn't do the egg thing right away. I didn't do the coffee thing right away. So they all kind of came with practice, I guess, with reading up and asking other people.
So with the eggshells and the coffee grounds, so like with our compost container, we just kind of put everything in, like when we're collecting it in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And so do you now keep your coffee grounds separate from when you're collecting food scraps?
Well, it's funny. Yes, my husband I don't drink coffee. I just don't like the taste of it. But my husband has for a long time always, I don't really know why actually. I think just out of like a quick thing to do. He always has like a mug where he just collects it. And then when it's full, then he puts it in our compost like container. Because we also have this isn't enough. This bin is not enough to handle the three of us. We also have a bag of compost that we do with a neighbor because they have curbside pickup and we don't. So if this is like I'd say it might be okay for a single person this size, but certainly you could get, I'm sure, bigger. What was the other thing I was going to say? And it doesn't, you can't put all the things in a vermicompost that you could with curbside pickup. So like as an example, it's quite different actually. As an example, like, so like fruit and veg scraps, obviously that's great. The coffee grounds, as I mentioned, plant cuttings is fine. Tea bags, the eggshells, cooked pasta and rice, that's fine, but it can't have any sauce. So I don't know about you, but like, I don't know when that ever happens.
Leftover pasta or pasta without sauce?
Pasta without sauce. Well, both actually. The egg cartons, coffee trays, those things. Bread, cereals, grains, leaves, and grass clippings, that's fine. So that's actually a little bit better than a lot of city composting. Beard and hair clippings is fine. Manure, I haven't done that. Sawdust from untreated wood. Now the things that they don't take is meat and bones, dairy products, salt, vinegar, cooking oils, sauces, and pet waste. And also, it says to avoid excessive citrus, but I just don't put citrus in there at all, just because it raises the pH levels, the acidity level so much. Yeah.
And you said they like food that's kind of already starting to break down. So they prefer that rather than like fresh.
Yes, absolutely. So what you can do is you can put your stuff, you know, in the fridge, like maybe just a little bin, a little container. Just put the scraps in the fridge. And then bring it to, it's better if it's at room temperature when you give it to them. Again, it's just about keeping it a hospitable kind of environment. The water that you use should be room temperature as well. Yeah. Trying to think what else.
You have a cat, right?
No, we borrowed a cat for a few days.
Okay. Did you have, because we have a cat and she's a pain in the ass. Did the cat that you borrowed ever like want to get in there?
No, yeah, it's a good question. She didn't, we kind of put all our plants in a different area when we borrowed the cat. So, cause I was worried about that. Cause I'm like, I don't remember which plants are no good for cats now. And I know they love to get into stuff. So I didn't even think about the composter cause it doesn't smell.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure an animal would probably smell it more than a human would, but she wasn't curious about it at all. So I don't know if it was just that cat or,
yeah.
And it is pretty like, let me see. For this one in particular, I mean, they'd have to like fully get their paws under here. Not that it's not possible, but
right.
I don't know.
I suppose worst case scenario, if you had to, you could like put a little latch on there or something. But
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, like probably like the baby stuff, you know, like you know, I'm sure that's probably a good solution if you have a very curious cat.
Yeah. And how long would you say it takes for you to get a completed batch of compost that you can use?
I think it was about like 2 to 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Do you think that's long or short?
I thought that was long because I kind of figured like once they eat the food and then poop it out, like that's the compost.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that you kind of don't want to take before there's like enough to take. So yeah, I think but once it gets rolling, like we had this whole thing completely maxed out, probably I'd say within 6-ish months. And so that whole tray was just like all for the garden.
Right.
Yeah, but it depends on your space. Like if you have a bigger space, then you'd probably want a bigger bin. And if it was going to be your main way to compost.
Right.
Yeah.
And your composting bin has 2 trays?
Yes, I think they all do, to allow, so the way that it works here, I'll show you. So the way that it works is, so they're in that, yeah, they're in this base bottom here. That's the first one. And then once they kind of get to like near the top, there's these, can you see that?
Yeah.
So that's little, here it is. That's little like holes so that they can migrate upwards. So you want to make sure that, so once it gets to that kind of top level of that first bin, you're going to want to make sure that the bedding is touching those little holes so that they can migrate up. And then you do the same. The only difference that you do with the next bin up is that you don't put newspaper on the bottom, because obviously you want them to come through, and then you stop feeding the bottom base because you want to encourage them to come up.
And then you can harvest that bottom base?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to go, to just wait until it's ready. I mean, I'm not like, I definitely have, when I've seen like some plants, I'm like, ooh, is that plant gonna die? Maybe I should add some, you know, I've grabbed like a little handful or something like that. But otherwise I've just kind of waited until it's fully ready to go. And
right.
Like, I don't feed mine the 2 to 3 times a week. So maybe it would be faster if you did feed them that. Yeah. So just trying to think.
And then,
yeah.
I have so many questions.
No,
and then,
please, I like it.
And then in terms of like how much time you spend like tending to your worm bin a week, like how much would you say that is?
Like nothing. Like, it's so, I am not gonna lie, I've forgotten about it definitely several times. And when I say forgotten, like maybe like 10 days or something like that, and I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta feed them. So it's pretty low maintenance. I think it all depends on what you want out of it. If you really want a yield, then you'll probably be more on top of it. But I got it for our plants, but also I'd say probably the main thing was to learn, and for our daughter, because it's been kind of cool to see her like feed the worms, and it gets her to appreciate, you know, the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of the main reasons we got one.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
And recently you had a bunch of worm babies.
Yeah.
Is there a way to like avoid that from happening? Like, or like you don't want too many worms that you just like don't know what to do with, right?
Yeah. So again, you just leave them. They can, from my experience, so I was worried at one point, I thought I was doing something wrong because the worms started to kind of gather around the edges a little bit. And I was like, oh no, are they going to start to escape? They never did. And I contacted Kathy, and she said, no, it's fine. They do that. Just, you know, when you see that, just pop them back into the soil. Yeah, so it's fine. Because what I had read that, you know, it meant that something was wrong with the environment in the bin. But she said, no, if there's no smell and, you know, you check this and that, whatever, she's like, no, that's fine. Sometimes they'll migrate a little bit. Just depends on what they're feeling like. But in terms of the babies, I think they just kind of handle themselves. Like if it gets too overrun, then yeah, I think that's what happens. Yeah. So because I was using all the bottom, I just used all the bottom soil the other day. So I wanted to, I was like, well, I might as well give this away since I'm actually going through it. And so I had enough to give 3 different kind of batches to people, which was kind of cool. Because some people were actually, I think all of them were new to composting that way. So yeah, it's kind of fun, but yeah, you don't have to worry about that, I don't think.
And do you, like, one thing I'm trying to figure out is if I'm gonna be able to have enough browns, because I know with the tumbler, you're supposed to have 3 to 4, like a 1 to 3 to 4 ratio.
Yes.
I don't know what the ratio is with the vermicompost, but
Yeah, see that, I think we don't really, is a tumbler inside?
no, it's outside. It's
Okay.
like yeah.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Yeah, I don't really love, like when I hear ratios, I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do it. So I don't really go by that. Like there isn't really any of that. I don't have to, it's based on the moisture. So if it feels like, at least that's how I've been doing it, and it seems to be fine. I think it's just the initial, you want to have a third of the Coir brick and newsprint and soil. You want to have a good balance of that. But after that, you're just kind of going with what feels like. If it feels like thick when you're going through it with a tool, like a shovel or whatever, or your hand, then it's probably too wet. And you want to air it out. It's just so that they can actually get through more easily.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I have all of my answers to my questions.
Yeah.
I think that you have sold me, and I want to try now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And I love the one you have, because we have a small apartment. And so something like that would work really well, because we could just tuck it away, but then we could use it, like you said, as seating if people come over. Well, not now, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's yeah, I've been really pleased with it. Like I said, I was really like worms, like I don't know. Those are the most common questions. Like worms in my house, what the F? Like, and the other thing is, do I have the space? And smell and pests. And all of those things have been totally fine. I have not had any issues. And my daughter would probably be the first to be like, there's a smell. But there really has not been any smell at all. Even when I was putting like rotting food in there, it was totally handled, which is so cool to see. Like, it's very neat to see what they don't like as well. They love avocado peels, and banana peels, and like they don't like potatoes.
really?
Yeah, they don't like, it's too hard, I think, to go to, yeah, that keeps getting rejected. I don't know that it's gonna work, but I had an avocado pit totally sprout, like big roots and a big like stem come out of it. I'm like, what do I do with this? Like, should I just leave it in there? Because it seems to be doing quite well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna kill it now that I've taken it out and trying to do something with it. But yeah, sometimes you open it up and it's like, bing, like things have sprouted. It's like there's no sun or anything. It's very cool.
That is super cool. Krista is asking about feeding them citrus. So I know you were saying that you just kind of avoid citrus.
Yeah.
Have you ever put it in there?
I haven't. I just avoid it. And because I have the luxury of having a neighbor who I can compost, like our weekly stuff, I reuse it for different things and all of that, but at the end of life, it goes into the city compost. Yeah. I just didn't want to mess with it because I was like, it says avoid excessive. I'm like, maybe I just won't do it at all. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think if there was anything. If anyone decides to go with Kathy's composters, this little booklet that comes with it is really pretty awesome. It is very helpful. It has like troubleshooting questions and stuff too. Even like ideas for if you do get fruit flies, little traps that you can set up and things like that. But I've been lucky and haven't had that. I've had the fruit flies from like my house plants, but not from the vermicompost.
That's amazing. I love it. Krista is also asking, when you use the worm tea, do you dilute it?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't had to use it much, but I think, yeah, you can. I think they say that you should dilute it. I'm not sure. You'd have to look into it, but I feel like I have read that before. I was actually really excited about getting the tea. But when I talked to Kathy and her husband at the market when I picked this up, they were like, you probably won't really get it, because if you're keeping like a hospitable environment, then there won't be excessive like moisture. So I was like, oh, but I want it.
It's so interesting because people refer to that compost tea as like, I've heard people call it liquid gold. So it's very interesting that.
Yeah, same. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's so small. So I don't like, it's easier to maintain that. I don't know that it's necessarily like a bad thing that it happens. It is good. I mean, like I said, I have had like one time stuff came out, but it was very little. Yeah, but it is supposed to be good. Yeah. Lightning round.
Woo, yes.
I almost forgot. Not letting you get away that quick.
I feel like I should be asking you the lightning round. You're the one giving all the info.
Oh, no. Let's see here. Well, there's only 3 of us on here right now, I think, right? So we could all do it. Let's see. Okay. Ocean. Would you prefer ocean or mountains?
Oh, that's hard. Ocean minus the sand.
Yeah. How about you, Adriana?
Ocean, definitely.
Yeah, I guess ocean. I don't love sand in my butt, but
I hate sand. I always joke with people because they're like, oh, you're from the Caribbean. I'm like, yeah, and I don't like sand and I don't like coconuts. So I've just blown up all of your stereotypes right there.
Salty or sweet?
Oof, both.
Yeah.
Especially together.
Yeah.
Right? Because like you're like, what do I end on is always my thing. I'm like, okay, I'm having chips and chocolate, but which one do I end on? That's always the big.
Just like a good compost bin, you have to have the right balance.
Ooh, well done.
Yeah.
Dancing or singing?
Oh, dancing. You know me.
Are you dancing as well?
Oh yeah.
Same. Do you prefer hot or cold?
Hot, 100%.
Yeah.
Same.
Same. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Asking someone the day after that they broke up with their significant other how their significant other was.
That is so specific. I love it.
It's like the worst trait that I have because I'd be like, oh, how's Joe? And they'd be like, oh, we just broke up. And I'm like, how do I always do that? Maybe it could be used for something good. I don't know. Maybe it means I have to situation.
Oh my God, that's really funny. I think I've heard one of yours, Adriana. Is it still the same?
The swim flying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Swim flying.
I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. I don't even remember what I said last time. I think that is one that I am into. I like being invisible would be pretty cool.
It would be, for sure.
Yeah. Do you prefer texting or talking?
I guess texting.
Yeah.
It depends on who I'm talking to, but generally talking.
Yeah. I feel like there's always, it's an interesting question nowadays. I feel like there's like a generational like gap, not always, but there's often like now I feel like most people are like, why are you calling me? Like, oh, sorry. Like,
Well, you can call me anytime.
is that?
You can call me anytime.
It's okay. I just force them into it. Who's your first celebrity crush? Oh yeah.
Channing Tatum.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Joey Lawrence.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Whoa. Yeah, I even had his cassette. Yeah.
Yes. Mine would probably be Joey McIntyre. This probably lets me like who? Okay, last one. Favorite carnival food?
Favorite carnival food?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Well, carnival for me is very different from carnival for you.
Well, then whatever your favorite.
Snow cone.
What's that?
Snow cone.
Snow cone.
For me, it's a definite split between a pogo and Tiny Tom's.
See, I don't even know what those are.
It's a deep fried, doughy hot dog, which would now have to be a veggie dog for me, but definitely they're delicious. And then Tiny Tom's is like a fresh donut company. So it's like a food truck. They fry like tiny little donuts like freshly in the truck, and then they come out and they sprinkle them in either icing sugar or cinnamon and sugar. They're so good.
Yum.
Yes.
As soon as you said pogo, I was like, yes. A veggie pogo, yeah. Like just dipping it in the ketchup. So drippy and
that's why I go to the CNE.
Yeah. We live so close to it, and I think we went one time and I was like, I don't think I can do it. It'd be interesting whether it will happen this year, but that's like our big it's the Canadian National Exhibition, like whatever huge affair. Like it marks the end of summer as well, so it's 2 weeks. So you're like, people are excited, but also like, oh no, summer is over. It's the end of August. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much for asking about all these things. I'm really glad that you tested my knowledge. I knew more than I thought I did, so that was cool. I'll look into the things that I didn't know.
Now you can go and teach vermicomposting workshops. You can add that to your repertoire.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting when that happens, right? You're like, I don't know. Do I know any of this? And you're like, and then let me show you. So yeah, cool. Thank you so much. And let me know what both of you decide in terms of your composting decisions. Yeah. If anyone watched and learned anything or decides to try it out, you can tag me, your eco friend, and we'll do our giveaway of sending you a personalized note with some seed paper so you can get some stuff growing at home. And yeah, so just make sure to tag us.
Thanks for doing this
so much.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to see you, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.